The foundation of the United States government rests upon the Constitution, a document that has guided the Republic for over 2 centuries. Designed as a balance between federal authority and state autonomy, the Constitution was intended to create a strong central government while preserving individual liberties and regional self-determination. However, from the outset, tensions have emerged regarding how power is distributed between the national government and the states. These tensions have shaped legal doctrine, political movements, and, at times, outright rebellion. The Constitution establishes a complex framework of governance through 3 branches of government: the executive, legislative, and judicial, and a system of checks and balances designed to prevent any single branch from becoming too powerful. Additionally, it sets forth mechanisms for amending the document, ensuring that it can adapt to the changing needs of society. Yet, despite these provisions, the question of how much authority should reside with the federal government versus individual states remains a contentious issue. Key provisions such as the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, the 10th Amendment, and the Necessary and Proper Clause, Article 1, Section 8, define the scope of national power. The Supremacy Clause establishes that federal law takes precedence over state laws, ensuring uniform governance across the nation. Conversely, the 10th Amendment reserves all powers not explicitly granted to the federal government for the states, providing a legal foundation for state sovereignty. Meanwhile, the Necessary and Proper Clause grants Congress the flexibility to pass laws deemed essential for executing its constitutional powers, often serving as a justification for federal expansion. Throughout American history, these constitutional provisions have been interpreted and reinterpreted, leading to debates over the legitimacy of federal intervention in areas such as civil rights, economic regulation, and public welfare. The ongoing tension between federal authority and state sovereignty remains a central theme in discussions about constitutional reform and political autonomy. Historic tensions, federal versus state authority. The struggle between centralized power and regional autonomy predates the Constitution itself. The Articles of Confederation, which governed the United States before the adoption of the Constitution, granted significant powers to the states while creating a weak national government. This arrangement quickly proved unworkable, leading to economic disarray, lack of military coordination, and interstate conflicts. The Constitutional Convention of 1787 sought to rectify these issues by creating a stronger central government, but the compromises made in the process sowed the seeds of future conflicts. From the early days of the Republic, different visions of governance clashed. The Federalists, led by figures like Alexander Hamilton and John Adams, advocated for a strong national government to unify the states and provide economic stability. In contrast, the Anti-Federalists, including Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry, feared that a powerful federal government would erode individual liberties and states' rights. These ideological divides played out in several early constitutional crises, including the Alien and Sedition Acts, 1798, passed under President John Adams. These laws expanded federal authority to suppress dissent and deport foreign nationals. In response, the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, authored by Jefferson and Madison, asserted the right of states to nullify unconstitutional federal laws. The Nullification Crisis, 1832 to 1833. South Carolina attempted to nullify federal tariffs, arguing that states had the right to reject federal laws deemed unconstitutional. President Andrew Jackson responded with the Force Bill, threatening military action to enforce federal law. A compromise was eventually reached, but the crisis underscored the fragility of state-federal relations. The Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The ultimate test of federal authority versus state sovereignty came when 11 southern states seceded from the Union, citing states' rights and economic disputes as justifications. The defeat of the Confederacy reaffirmed the primacy of federal authority, but the underlying tensions never fully disappeared. The Reconstruction period following the Civil War saw a temporary expansion of federal power, particularly in enforcing civil rights protections. However, as federal troops withdrew from the South in 1877, states regained significant autonomy, leading to the entrenchment of Jim Crow laws and segregationist policies. The 20th and 21st centuries have continued to witness conflicts over the balance of power, from desegregation battles in the civil rights movement to modern debates over issues like healthcare, gun control, and environmental regulations. The question remains, is the current constitutional framework sufficient to address these tensions, or is a more fundamental restructuring required? Secession in American mythos. The idea of secession has been embedded in American political thought since the nation's founding. While the Civil War solidified the legal precedent that states cannot unilaterally secede, the concept has never entirely disappeared from the national discourse. Instead, it has evolved into a symbol of resistance, autonomy, and, at times, discontent with federal authority. Early secessionist movements. Even before the Civil War, there were multiple instances where secessionist sentiment emerged in different regions of the country. New England secession, 1814, during the War of 1812. The Hartford Convention saw Federalist leaders from New England discuss the possibility of secession due to economic hardships caused by the war. Though no action was taken, the episode highlighted that secessionist sentiment was not exclusive to the South. Texas, as an independent republic, 1836 to 1845. Texas declared independence from Mexico in 1836 and existed as an independent republic before joining the United States in 1845. To this day, some Texas nationalist movements argue that the state's unique history grants it a special status within the Union. California's Bear Flag Revolt, 1846, before its formal incorporation into the United States. A group of American settlers in California declared independence from Mexico, leading to the short-lived California Republic. The Civil War and its aftermath. The most significant and violent secessionist movement in U.S. history occurred with the formation of the Confederacy in 1861. While the primary catalyst for secession was the institution of slavery, broader grievances about states' rights and federal authority played a role in the Southern states' decision to leave the Union. Following the Union victory, legal barriers to secession were reinforced. The Supreme Court case Texas v. White, 1869, ruled that states do not have the right to unilaterally secede, declaring that the United States is an indestructible union. Despite this ruling, secessionist rhetoric has persisted in various forms. Modern secessionist and autonomy movements. In contemporary America, secessionist discourse takes on various forms, some symbolic, some serious. While no major movement has gained significant traction toward actual separation, discussions of state sovereignty and autonomy continue to shape political narratives. California independence, Calexit. Spurred by political and cultural differences, some advocates argue that California, with its massive economy and progressive policies, would function better as an independent nation. Texas nationalism, Texit. Periodic calls for Texas to assert its independence emerge, often rooted in the state's historical status as a former republic and concerns over federal overreach. Hawaiian sovereignty. Some Native Hawaiian groups advocate for the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom, arguing that the U.S. annexation of Hawaii was illegal and that the islands should be self-governing. Alaskan and Puerto Rican independence. Both Alaska and Puerto Rico have had independence movements that question their place within the American system. These modern movements highlight continued dissatisfaction with federal governance and raise the question of whether existing constitutional mechanisms are sufficient to address regional grievances. While full secession remains unlikely, increasing polarization and regional divisions suggest that some form of structural reform may be necessary. Conclusion. The constitutional framework of the United States has proven remarkably resilient, but it has never fully resolved the underlying tensions between federal authority and state sovereignty. As political, economic, and social divides deepen, questions surrounding governance, autonomy, and constitutional adaptation become more pressing. Is the current structure sufficient to maintain national unity, or does the republic require a reboot to better address the realities of the 21st century? These are the questions that will shape the next phase of the American experiment.